Bill Levinson. Bill Levinson is a distinguished attorney from an area of law that most people have heard of, but most people know nothing about. But I know him because we went to school together since 7th grade.
You know, when I'm now 68 and I'm looking at dip my toe into politics, the right has decried the moral relativism of the left for years. Oh, there's no good and evil. All you liberals don't believe in morality. Actually, what I'm seeing now is a complete abandonment of the honor code.
I don't mind, Judge, if you go to a different church than I do. Mm-hmm. I don't mind if you went to a different law school than me. I know you can read and write. I know the law school you went to has very fine professors, and you know good and goddamn well what this law says. So we may not be best friends, and we may not go out to dinner after this show, but I can depend on you to call the balls and strikes. The growing tendency of people not to call balls and strikes. As a liberal, you don't much care where somebody's coming from as long as it's honest and intellectually accurate and fair. Decent. I got a call from Wendy Hollywood, the fabulous Wendy Hollywood, who is our other host, who is under the weather today. So we miss her and wish her well and ask her to come back as soon as possible. In the meantime, we have the moonlighting poet, Emmy Langford.
Hi.
She never shares her poetry. My name is Mark Fury, and this our second ever guest.
Okay.
I had to go with almost like a comfort guest, Bill Levinson. Bill Levinson is a distinguished attorney from an area of law that most people have heard of, but most people know nothing about. And then he gave that stuff up to be a musician. But I know him because we went to school together since 7th grade, and we've seen each other 5 times since graduation. So we know each other well, but we have a lot of catching up to do.
But those are the best kinds of friends.
I think so.
You pick up right where you left off.
Yeah, so. I'm comfortable.
And this time we're recording all of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's it. And damn it, I didn't get him to sign a release. I feel terrible.
No, he'll sign it. He'll sign
We'll
it.
sign it after the fact.
We'll get him.
The one person I'm not worried about is Bill Levinson.
Just make sure it doesn't take another 15 years.
I will hire him to sue me when I get sued.
Okay. Yeah. So 7th grade.
Yes.
And we
well, let me tell you the fun part.
Tell me the fun part.
I think this is the fun part. I'm going to ruin your reputation right now.
All right.
I would tell anybody that I was in the top 3 cool kids of our class, right? Mm-hmm. He was also in the top 3, but he was also class president.
I have to correct you. I was the president of the entire student body.
I'm sorry. I am corrected.
Jeff Prebor was president
of our class?
Yeah.
Oh. He was the president of the student council?
Student body.
The whole student body.
Of it all.
Right.
Of it all.
Mr. President.
Like Trump. Yes, you can call me that. Mr. President.
So I guess we should go on. You were telling Emmy Langford, the moonlighting poet, that there was a quota at the school you went to. What was wrong with that?
Yeah, I started at public school, right, and the accepted wisdom of the educated bourgeois families was send your kids to private school after a few years of public school. Mm. And so my sisters went to a private school for a while, and then I was sent to Pingree. My brother was sent first, and he was rejected. And the headmaster called my father. The headmaster looked like a Presbyterian minister.
H. Westcott Cunningham, or the one before?
No, it was
Atwater.
Charles Atwater.
Charles.
And Charles said, Mr. Levinson, your son should reapply. And my father said, why? He didn't get accepted. And Charles said, he's a very smart boy. He was just the 10th Jewish boy, and we can't have 10. So my brother reapplied. And now he's a professor at Harvard Medical School and PhD from Stanford, and smart guy.
So let me ask you.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question right
there.
That. Well, so I'm going to ask you a question.
No kidding.
But we all thought it was that if that's what it took.
That's what it was, and that's what it was.
Right.
So just one Jew too many. So sorry.
One Jew too many.
So this is the question that I'm going to ask both of y'all to talk about together. In my view, the way we should look at that is that we're talking 1967, 68, 69, 70.
Yeah.
There have been race riots all over the country by that time. A couple assassinations, including a president, his brother, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X,
Right.
a lot of dead people. And the richest, whitest people in New Jersey said, maybe we should address our diversity issues.
I think that's how I look at it. I actually look at those quotas not as something I would advocate per se, a strict quota like that, but I considered it an act of goodwill. I considered it, let me put it this way. Pingree right now is a pure meritocracy, except for money. If you contribute a ton of money, you'll get in. But it's not a WASPy prep school anymore. It's heavily Asian. And the meritocracy can prove, without some quotas, can prove to be more unfair than our primitive 1967 version where 10 Jews too many, 9 Jews exactly right.
2 black kids, no more, no less. 2 black kids,
not 3. Exactly. And then there was an Italian contingent from town, and then there was a WASPy, wealthy contingent from Summit, Short Hills, and Mendham. And
And Dave Rapson used to come up from the shore
with his surfboard. So it was. I'm not sure what the answer is. I can say that I learned about. I felt I was in a fairly homogenous but still diverse group. If that doesn't sound like too much of a contradiction.
So let me invite you into this part with this easy question. We were talking about this a little bit before we got on the camera, and I get to say it now. I had nightmares every night for the first year. By the time the second year got here, they were down to once a week. And by the 4th year, it was once a quarter, but it was always the same nightmare. I was running a cross-country race in the middle of war-torn France in the countryside, literal cross-country, with a bunch of villains, thieves, scoundrels, brigands, rapists, pirates. I always remember the one same guy. You know how like the old-fashioned bodybuilders with the bald head and the big, right? And he had a red and white striped shirt going this way. And I'm sitting here now, 67 years old, 60 years later, and I can remember this so vividly right now, okay? Because I felt the pressure to perform in a school full of boys where I was one of the smallest, right? And everybody was smart and almost everybody was more well off than not. I mean, even as I went, I wasn't poor by any standard, but I didn't match the son of the general counsel of the Bank of America who was in our class.
No, of course not.
Right, but we had kids from Linden, Josh Breakstone, Fred. Was a whole group of people, Gina Michi from, there's a whole crowd of people who were very middle class.
But what I want to know from you is, did you feel pressure to compete?
I felt that from my family. I didn't need Pingree to tell me that. My father made that clear. Okay. I got a C once at Pingree. In college. Must have been in college because it was a C, and at Pingree we got graded by numbers.
So you'd never seen a C before when you got one?
Never. And he takes me in his car, and we drive down the Parkway. Mm-hmm. And he sees one of the yellow Parkway maintenance trucks. Mm-hmm. Pulls up behind it. He's got a cigar. We're in a big Cadillac. My father's very dry and very loving, but very dry man, a few words. And he just paused there. I said, "What are we doing?" He didn't answer. He just cracked the window, just leaning back. And then the guy goes out with a shovel. He picks up like a dead dog or something, and he puts it in the bag and throws it in the truck. And my father had good comedic timing. And right at the right time, he said, "There are a lot of jobs for the kids who get C's." And that was it.
I was more afraid he was going to compare you to the dog that got put in the bag.
That was it. And then he
this
said,
is what we do with our C students.
That's what you get if you get a D.
Yeah.
Then he says, "You want to go? Let's go have some lunch." you want some seafood down in Perth Amboy?
So now he's going to really grind it in.
No. It was nice.
That was the end of it?
Meaning it was over.
Right.
Oh, wow.
You got the message. I get that you got the message. We're done with that.
Now, what did your dad do?
Well, he passed away. He was a lawyer.
I knew that. I'm sorry, stupid. Right. So the lawyer dad was talking to the son who became a lawyer, right? About how easy it is to fall out of the privilege into the horror show.
Well, he grew up in the horror show. So in the Depression, in a crummy family, loving siblings, but
Crumbing family circumstance.
horrible.
Yeah.
So his idea was, if his stories of his childhood begin at World War II when he became a major in the Army Air Force, flying missions over Germany. So he did everything before that he never talked about because it sucked.
Yeah.
So he never wanted us to ever have to experience anything like that. And the only way out for him was education, and that the Army, and then education, the GI Bill. And that was going to be it for us. So that's why my brother and I went to Stanford. My sister went to Harvard, on and on. Everyone is a PhD except me.
So now Emmy Langford grew up in Philippines.
Yes, I did.
Where'd you grow up?
In the Philippines.
Really?
Well, and a bunch of different places, but my formative years were spent.
Was in Marcos? Was
No, well, Marcos is back in power. His son, they just elected him a few years ago. If you can
no,
believe
his
that.
son. Well, who was it?
But,
Duterte?
No. It was Gloria. Gloria, whose name all of a sudden I can't remember her last name.
That's not important.
I know it is to me though. I can't believe.
Was she the first female president?
I don't believe so, but she was not popular. Forgive me while I double check myself here. I remember her not being Gloria Arroyo. I do not believe she was the longest serving, and Philippine politics. Now, I didn't really get into politics or understanding them really until I moved back here when I was in my early 20s, and then certainly with the 2016.
How old were you when you hit Philippines?
I was 13. So I was there from 13 to 22. So yeah, all those really important, very formative, but also very, very much a party culture where I lived and how I lived. So you would hear things about politics and you would get kind of blanket explanations from people that you knew or the teachers that you had of like, well, this is a very corrupt country. And it's not always about the figureheads that you see, but the people behind the scenes. And also there's no separation of church and state.
Were there a lot of Anglo kids?
It depends on where you go. Yes. I went to two of the major international schools in Manila, International School Manila, ISM, and Brent, which was a Christian international school where I believe a lot of the Army brats were. I did not thrive in those schools because I always came from a much smaller, I'm good in a small classroom. Louisville, Kentucky, where I moved from before I moved to the Philippines, I was living in Louisville, and I was in this tiny little academy where I was one of 7 in the entire grade.
Grade, right?
Yeah, not just my class, the grade.
Got it.
So to suddenly move at 13 and then suddenly move to a completely different culture at 13 and then be thrown into these massive schools.
With a bunch of kids in the same weird circumstance that you were in, that they were not natives. They were. And
some of them were. And some of them weren't.
Well, tell me about the schools themselves, because I'm trying to make a comparison between the weird circumstance I found myself in, the one that he was forced into, for lack of a better word, by your father's ambitions. This is how I got there. And then obviously your family travel forced you into.
Yes. I would say my circumstance was way different, just because while I was a minority in the country, you never, in terms of color or whiteness, the terms of that were never like, for me at least, it never felt like racism had a key in it. Now, I do come from a very, very liberal progressive family, so certain words I never heard until I read Of Mice and Men, shall we say, or like certain, I was very sheltered from that in America.
What about the privilege?
Privilege is blind to those who have it. So it's not until I looked back on it that I was like, oh, there are certain things here that, even little things I would go to. I lived on a small island for a number of years. And that's when we first moved there. So when I was 13 through 15, almost 16, lived on this tiny little island. And we lived in, it was a house. There was like a little area that had a bunch of houses. Normal houses, normal. We had hot water. We had, to me, it was just moving from one place to the next. And it wasn't until I would go visit friends and be like, oh, my first slumber party. And I would notice like maybe the houses were like made a little differently, or there were just certain things like, oh, you guys don't have your air conditioning running because we're Irish bog people. And so that we need that air con on all the time. And I'm like, man, it's hot in here. Going to turn the air conditioning on. And they're like, it's what air conditioning? Like, oh, sorry, didn't no. Like, that's when you start to realize like, oh, just don't like assume things. Right. The worst was when I went to go take a shower. And I was like the second of the girls to go take the shower. And I'm in there for so long because I'm like, this hot water will not start. I'm sitting here forever, like running this one. There's no hot water. And I come out in my little towel and all my friends that I'm just meeting and I've been there for less than a year and I'm the new little white girl that's there. And I'm like, how do you turn on your hot water? And they all turned and looked at me and started laughing because
what
hot water?
Now, were those Filipino kids or white kids?
A mix, mostly Filipino. So in that tiny island that I lived on, there was a lot of, you call it Filam, Filipino Americans. There's a lot of Germans in the Philippines. And a lot of German Filipino mixes, especially in that island.
Why did they end up there? Oh, after the war,
yes.
That's one of the places they ended up.
Yes.
Quick question: how did you end up there?
Oh, my dad ran call centers. So in the
you ran
call centers, telemarketing. Okay. So in the early aughts, when they started outsourcing to Asia and Central and South America and India, that was us. And so yes, there was a amount of privilege that I was not privy to until looking back on it or realizing or saying something and then realizing someone might have had a reaction to something I said, because you don't think about it, especially when you're a kid. And it's not like your parents can tell you because they don't know either. They're also having these same experiences with people.
But you didn't feel it as pressure as he described or as I described.
That's where I've forgotten where I was going on this line of thought. Not even remotely. And I was a gifted and talented sort, and I did some slacking in high school.
She's a theater kid.
I was a theater kid. I would say elementary school, parts of middle school, and then college is where I was really like focused. But high school, there's no drinking age in the Philippines. Oh. So you get a lot of work done. You got a different work done than high school. I would say high school, I slacked quite a bit. But no, I never felt as a minority, I better keep my act together because, whatever. It was more like, but this is also Asia. I knew the crazy rich Asians, the real ones.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's like I thought of people as more privileged than me because of money.
Yeah, there was a very privileged class in the Philippines.
I mean,
it made you look like the serving class.
100%, but it's all kind of. I would say it's based kind of on money. There's no real middle class. There is, but it's by name only, which means like I look a certain way, I can speak a certain way, I can hold a certain job. Now I might not have as much money as like the actual high class in this area, but I'm not a member of the masa, which is the lower class, the majority of the Philippines. Does that make sense? Where
it's like White Lotus. You got the top and then you have the...
But not everybody has the money per se to back it up. It doesn't really matter though, because it's more about presenting.
So funny you should say that. I want to ask
in my experience.
I want to ask both of you now, because I think we've established there are some similarities between all three experiences. Our experiences are literally the same experience, but here 20, 30 years later, hers is similar in a different country. But I would be willing to bet that the education that each of us was exposed to affects our view of how this whole world's supposed to run.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. But, the education, I thought the education that Mark and I got, at least the way I absorbed it, and I had a lot of educational experiences afterwards, which were terrific. And I'm a student, and I love being a student. The education at Pingree was a traditional education, which required inquiry. It required comprehension. And it required discipline. But it was not enough at the end of the day just to know the material. It was not accepted. If you wanted to thrive, you had to create out of it something
Some original
inspirational, something, in my feeling, divine, something that is the application of your humanity to the facts and knowledge that you're acquiring. And that creates, to me, divinity. It's like a poem is a form of human divinity,
Yes,
I
of
think.
course.
I can't think of a better bit of divinity than Keats's To Autumn. I mean, to me, it's a divine expression of humanity and the poignancy of being alive and dying. But but the fact that it also took no prisoners, we were graded on a bell curve.
Chased
We were
across
we-
countryside.
with your strong
Fight.
man. Yeah.
We were graded on a bell curve. Now, it wasn't a total bell curve, but I don't know if you know what a bell curve is. It looks like that. And if a pure bell curve, if all the grades are between 90 and 100, 90 is the lowest
failing.
grade.
90
and
is
100
failing.
is
Oh,
a
I know.
1, and then the distribution follows the curve. Now, it wasn't that cruel, but it was a bell curve. And the second thing was there was an honor code, which was fierce.
Excellent.
And it was based upon just human dignity. And in fact, it was based on, you had to behave in a way that you knew that your classmates would feel morally offended if you cheated.
May I offer you a description that I used to use?
What?
The deal, as I understood it, was if I leave my books in the hallway,
They'll be there.
They'll be there.
10 years later,
They'll be there.
they'll be there.
And it's even more than that. There was just no cheating. So, but when I'm now 68 and I'm looking at to dip my toe into politics at the the right has decried the moral relativism of the left for years. Oh, there's no good and evil. All you liberals don't believe in morality. Actually, what I'm seeing now is a complete abandonment of the honor code and the dignity of that I learned in 1967 in a waspy, privileged school of really the rich and powerful. There was sort of a commandment from on high that you don't lie, that you don't cheat, but there was another side to it.
And you don't steal.
You don't what?
There were three things. You don't lie, you don't cheat,
You don't
and
steal.
you don't steal.
Oh, feel?
Steal.
Steal.
Which is why the books would be there 10 years later, because nobody's going to touch your books.
Of course.
Because they're not yours.
But this was taught by the people.
I'm agreeing with you.
The power structure of America this wasn't being taught by Summerhill. Summerhill was an experimental school. Do you remember the book?
We're going to get to this. I want you to continue. We're going to get to the heart of this because it's important that we understand this. I just want to throw this in real quickly.
Please.
I want to ask him, do you consider yourself a liberal?
Yes.
And to you, what does that mean?
The definition of liberal is based on I'm not sure of the Latinate etymology of the word. Someone pointed it out to me recently.
Do you consider yourself an egghead? Because you definitely are.
But I would say, what's the word liberal? Liberty, the equal distribution of liberty. I think liberty is the premise of a society that makes everything else work. It will not always result in equal distribution of assets of the society. I'm not.
Because there's capitalism and you have to compete, and that's what they taught us.
They didn't actually teach us that at Pingree one bit. I don't think there was I didn't take any politics or
No, I mean the competition. The competition is.
Oh, the competition was a form of capitalism. Some prevailed and got into Harvard, and some prevailed and got into Brown. That was
Right,
the
yeah.
distinction. It was a tough run,
No,
right?
listen.
If you got into Colgate, oh shit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was the default school.
That was a default school.
Yeah, I went there, by the way.
And yet Colgate right now is one of the hardest schools to get into
Oh,
in the country.
12 kids from my graduating class also started at Colgate the
Right.
year that I went there. Absolutely.
I didn't even know you went to Colgate.
I
I
did.
didn't mean to hurl that out there like
It's quite
that.
all right. I finished at Rutgers.
Well, I started at Stanford and I finished at Wesleyan.
Okay.
And I found Wesleyan to be a superior school
Yeah.
because it was like Pingree. It was small, progressive. Anyway, I guess my point about what is liberalism, it's humanism, it's decency.
Mhm.
It's what was the line? Can't we just be decent? What movie was that?
Got me.
I don't know. Maybe Kevin Costner said it, or
Yeah.
somebody who represents that in movies. But can't we just be decent and treat each other with decency? And I think that's it. So
Yeah.
I think I think it supersedes policy choices. You could be liberal and think of one solution to a problem, and be liberal and think of another one.
But you don't have to belong to a cult to be a liberal, right?
You don't, and nor did you have to belong to a cult to be conservative in the old days.
In the old days.
In fact, they looked at the John Birch Society
As a,
as a cult. In the old days of conservatism, William F. Buckley, who was a pretty mean-spirited guy in many ways and a harsh intellectual, he was the first to disavow the extreme right of the conservative movement. You know, we don't want you in our tent. You're not nice people. You're outwardly racist.
Mhm.
I may be inwardly racist, but you guys are outwardly racist, and we can't have that.
so let me just ask
So
this
back
question.
then, both parties had a wider spectrum and an intolerance for the
And I want
unacceptable limit.
I want to pick up right where you are, because now my question for you is, you went on to become, if I can phrase it this way, one of the foremost plaintiffs' attorneys in the state for quite a while. There?
In my field,
In your field. In your
Yeah,
field
small
of
medical malpractice.
medical malpractice. Okay. One of the things I promised myself I was going to ask him is, did your clients ever lie to you about their conditions?
My cases were not based on what my clients said.
Mhm.
These, I didn't do red light, green light cases. I'm sure they lied about things, but my cases were based on science and medicine and what happened in an operating room or the labor and delivery. And my clients' input, most of them, they were unconscious when the crime occurred.
Right.
Or the tort occurred. But, and everything had to be backed up by records, so that if your client says, I saw the doctor 16 times and complained about X every time, I'd also have the doctor's records. So if there was a dispute in those two findings, I'd have to then grill the client and say, are you sure? Because maybe I don't see it here, but I do see references to the same thing, let's say 3 out of 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
They go, well, that's probably more accurate. I go, well, then let's not gild the lily. Let's just tell it exactly like it is. But most of one of the reasons I kind of liked malpractice was because, well, first, the stakes were huge in the cases. So that made it worth it, both financially and intellectually.
It's a challenge.
You're
It's a
committing
challenge.
7 years to a case, or
Yeah.
6 years
Wow.
before you resolve it. And it mattered to the people, but it was also an intellectual challenge. I mean, you really had to
Piece
go
it
to
together.
Harvard, go to Stanford, go to Hopkins to get experts to persuade them, please testify against another doctor.
And then you got to write them a check
And
for
then
20
you've
grand,
got to write
right?
a check for
There you
$25,000
go.
to take. Now, I got one expert who was head of epidemiology at Johns Hopkins, and she said, well, what should I charge you? I believe this railroad worker was exposed to 4 different carcinogens, which caused his diseases. And, but I don't know what to charge you. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, I've never done this before. And she, so I said, well, I would give you probably $25,000 to start, and then you would bill me, $500 or $600 an hour.
Mhm.
She
And
goes,
she fell
"Oh,
off her chair.
that's not acceptable."
Obscene.
And I said, "What do you mean? I mean, that's pretty good." She goes, "No, no, no, no. How about $2,500? And I think $150 an hour is
Yeah.
fair." And
So thank you, because you led me to my question.
that
How
was-
did your liberalism affect your effectiveness as a for-profit attorney?
the profit motive is fine. It's not inconsistent with liberalism at all. It's completely consistent. But what my liberalism did was, when I would speak to the jury, okay, here's an argument I had with my cousin, a lawyer who is now 93, but extremely astute and extremely smart and extremely his cognitive abilities at 93 exceed mine. So he was praising another lawyer as being brilliant. And he said he was so brilliant because he was so dispassionate and understated. And he convinced the jury carefully and incrementally by facts, and he would hurt a witness just by quietly and carefully deconstructing his argument on cross-examination. And I said, well, to each his own. I said, but if you want to ring the bell and get justice and a headline and want to change something, that won't work. You have to come out as the voice of moral rightness, and you have to become a preacher.
Yeah.
And there is nothing short. And Richard said, what do you mean preaching? He got all uncomfortable. And I said, preaching. I mean, you have to tell the jury that there is a heaven and a hell, there's a right and a wrong, and there are people who are misbehaving. And sometimes in law, you can't use the word punish because we're seeking compensation, not punishment. But you can say, at the end of days, people will get their
just dues.
They're just due. But today is the end of days for this doctor.
Right.
And, when the judge tells you that what he says makes no difference, and to not pay attention to whatever opinions he may have articulated, you know what? He's right. So, and I did this in front of Judge Walls in Newark, who had been hurting my case the whole time. And I looked right at the judge and I said, and if the judge said bad things about my client or made it feel like he didn't think my client should win, you have an obligation to ignore him as if he were nobody. The only thing you can listen to from that judge is the statement of the law. And if he doesn't tell you those words, this is a mistrial, and he will, by not telling you those words, have made this whole thing an exercise in stupidity because we'll have to redo it.
It's all for,
And he was steaming. And I got a giant verdict, which was a real comment on Judge Walls. It wasn't about the case. They were saying, you're the voice of the little guy. And to hell with that judge who doesn't want you to win for your little client.
She's ready to go with a comment. Go ahead.
Oh no, I've just seen and read verdicts for different things. I'll go down a rabbit hole for something, and I'll see a statement made by a judge after any kind of preside, and you're just like, I don't know. I think of a judge as, you sit there, you take it in, you listen to the facts,
call strikes and fouls.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
But
Balls
to
and
come
strikes.
out, and sometimes I've just read some, let's say more conservative judges, maybe down south, just commenting on things after the fact and being like, that's not your place to then turn to the defendant, who may or may not, for any given reason, whether it's correct or not, or just based on the case I'm thinking of in particular is a really sensitive one. That was maternal filicide, which is, maternal neonaticide, which is a whole other thing. If anybody ever wants to look into it, it's extremely depressing, and not for the reasons you'd think. But, this young girl was taken advantage of, I believe, by a family member, and ignored the pregnancy, had it in secret, and abandoned the child or the baby. And they put her up for murder and all this stuff. And that's not really what it is. Not when it's a child giving birth to a baby.
To a child, right.
It doesn't. But the way this judge stood up after they sentenced her to whatever they sentenced her, and brought down all this judgment on her after the fact, it was like, it made me feel icky about judges. So it's interesting that you say when they bring up a character call and that you can mess it up by saying.
Unfortunately, that's an area at sentencing where the judge has this free reign. Mm-hmm. Mark knows more about this than I do.
What's
but
the point
at
of having
sentences,
lawyers or a jury?
Well, at sentencing, they can say things like, "You are a disgrace to mankind." Now, during the course of the trial, they can't.
No.
But at the sentencing, that's their opportunity to do that. Right now, we're seeing something on the Supreme Court, which you might find interesting. It really began with Scalia of actually making snarky, kind of crummy comments about other opinions. Now, and then since then, it's accelerated. And now Jackson
is hitting back, right?
Is hitting back hard. And they're saying, "Oh my God, she's breaching decorum."
I'm glad
because she's a black woman.
Yeah, of course.
Scalia.
I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad what you said, because my next question for both of you is that I think you would agree with me that in the discipline that we grew up in, high school, college, law school, practice for 40 years, right? Mm-hmm. I don't mind, Judge, if you go to a different church than I do. Mm-hmm. I don't mind if you went to a different law school than me. I know you can read and write. I know the law school you went to has very fine professors, and you know good and goddamn well what this law says. So we may not be best friends, and we may not go out to dinner after this show, but I can depend on you to call the balls and strikes. And what you're talking to is the growing tendency of people not to call balls and strikes.
Well, doesn't it go back to the honor system and the behavior we were taught? There was a certain, and it was a WASPy thing that it came from at Pingree. Its origin was sort of well, I don't know what Pingree was. Was he Presbyterian?
Sturdy skin of New England, old John Pingree. We hail Presbyterian.
So he created a culture of decency. And it was a very WASPy. When you go into a WASPy family, you don't talk about politics. You don't talk about religion. You use...
We don't do that in the bars either, by the way. Here at the Triangle Pubcast, we don't talk about politics. So anybody watching at home understands this is just sociology and philosophy. We're not talking politics.
If you ever come to my bar and this man is sitting there, just walk away if you don't want to hear politics, because it's
I'm the crazy.
He's the bad influence at my bar. Really Thank you.
I do.
Oh, we've taken people to task. We're bad people. You make me a better you make me a better person and a worse bartender.
Now I play in a band.
Yes.
I play in the house band. Mm-hmm. I started the house band at John and Peters, and John and Peters is sort of a legendary music venue in New Hope, Pennsylvania, and for 50 years. Of nonstop music, open 365 days a year. But our house band is called the Invitational, and it has now, the titular head has found Jesus and Trump. And he uses his microphone as a bully pulpit. Now, it's a very progressive bar in terms of it has a high gay, it's New Hope, first of all. Yeah. And it's not the motorcycle bar. So the motorcycle people go to France and vote a certain way probably, or maybe.
What you know is the folk that come see you are not those guys.
But some of them might well be. I know that plenty of the people who see us every week are those guys, but they just keep their mouths shut. We don't talk about it. And there's this is what I was talking about, old school WASPy good manners. That's part of what we learned at Pingree was don't behave badly. Even if you're thinking bad thoughts, you don't have to say them. If you're thinking a contentious thing, it's not necessary.
Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said right now?
And will it wait till lunchtime? Because you can say anything at lunchtime.
So he started on, he does, I found Jesus every once in a while, meanwhile, he's gifted musician. Gifted.
What does he play?
Guitar and sings, and he's just gifted.
I have to know when jazz night is.
And he's very good on mic.
Mm-hmm. He's a personality.
He's got a lot of personality, and he's just as good as they get. And the question was, what do we do about it?
One quick question before we go on. How old is he?
Probably 55.
So this is a late life, I won't say conversion, but expression of his spiritual sense.
His needs have been gratified or fulfilled by a certain vision of order and meaning by.
And the promise of hierarchy.
Well,
and
I don't know
satisfaction.
how deep I can go into the whys and wherefores of his
I'm gonna tell you this.
motivations, but I
I'm
can
gonna tell you
suggest
this,
that.
counselor. You've been a lawyer for 40 years. You've spoken to juries. You had millions of clients. I think you can make judgments. I should tell you this, and this is important for our listeners to understand. The reason we started this podcast is because we believe that lawyers and bartenders are the only people that really understand human beings. So if you have an opinion, you are free to express it.
Well, I do think, I mean,
he still actively plays with the man, I think.
Why do you think people go to Jesus in that way, that evangelical way, for many reasons? There's the Catholic liberation theology, which I love. Pope Francis, he was a hero of mine. Berrigan, who went and chained himself to nuclear power plants. Reverend Coffin, Bill Coffin from the Riverside Church in New York, was a huge progressive anti-war.
How do you get from Jesus to Trump is what I'd like to know.
I don't think there's a connection.
Jesus is a jug, and you just fill it with whatever any person needs. That's what it is.
That's what it's become.
No, I think that's. I've not quite found Jesus. I wasn't raised in an overly religious household. We were like Easter Catholics. You know what I mean? Like put on the nice dress for Easter and go.
Right.
But we weren't practicing at all.
So here's a question.
I've seen people go evangelical. I've lived in a very, very Christian place.
So here's my question, and I would ask this of anyone. Asking questions of people with strong religious views is kind of my most fun thing to do. If Jesus said, and the Bible from which this Jesus comes says, welcome the stranger, care for the poor, extend yourself.
Right.
It's harder for a rich man, harder for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man into the kingdom of heaven, right?
If you would square that circle.
Yeah, if you truly want to follow me, then sell all you have and give. How can it be that? And also, I don't want any more brown people to come into my country.
They follow a different theology.
It's different interpretations as well.
There are two Jesuses. One is full of piss and vinegar and with a sword.
Yes, I come not to bring peace, but a sword.
Let me tell you, the four horsemen of the apocalypse is not a Jewish Old Testament concept. That's a New Testament stuff. And that Jesus and that God is rapacious. So was the Old Testament God, by the way. These were not role models.
They're not.
If you observe your friend working on the Sabbath, thou shalt kill him. So thou shalt not kill does not,
apply to people that are breaking the faith.
Which you must kill the person. If you mix the two threads of different materials in your garment, you shall be stoned. That not high, but killed. So what it comes from, part of it is a Catholic thing. J.D. Vance is a Catholic, and Scalia was a Catholic. And it's a rigid pre-Vatican II version of Catholicism, which imagines or presupposes a vindictive God. It's more Old Testament than New.
Well, the one that lasted 1,000 years from 438 to 1492, and then got revamped again, and we're still living with it. They've come
back. We briefly had Vatican II, where
the revenge. Sorry.
Yeah, and now they consider Vatican II anathema, and they want to return to the Latinate Mass. Not that anyone understands Latin, but J.D. Vance doesn't care what the words are.
No.
Well, that brings up another hard point. So you'll be fascinated to know this. Because of the premise of this podcast, lawyer walks into a bar, which is why we were thrilled to have you on. Right? Our first guest.
Is the podcast called A Lawyer Walks Into a Bar?
For simplicity, it's called the Triangle Pubcast, but the tagline is A Lawyer Walks Into a Bar.
All right.
Our first guest was a former mayor of Franklin Township, the first Black female mayor of any town in the state of New Jersey. And she started out with telling us her humble beginnings as a bartender, so that was appropriate. Now you're here, clearly a lawyer, and clearly this is our bar, and you've laid out some things, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't know. But the thing that I think that fascinates me most that I've heard from what you've said so far is that as a liberal, you don't much care where somebody's coming from as long as it's honest and intellectually accurate and fair.
Decent. Decency. So I think there could be tremendous distinct policy differences, ways to accomplish things. And there can be things that I find anathema I won't accept. But if their motivation is decent, I can say, all right, that's why the world is not made up of just me. That's why it's a good place. If I knew everything, I wouldn't need anybody else. Right. That's why we're here together, so that we share and we try to get better, and we disagree, and that's all right. And, in a Jewish family, a Jewish Thanksgiving, which is the highest Jewish holiday of all.
They don't call it Thanksgiving.
What?
They don't call Thanksgiving in the Jewish.
Sure we do. Jews do Thanksgiving. When the Jews came here, and the first holiday they adopted was Thanksgiving, because it's family and a ton of food. Did you ever see
Jewish
Barry
America?
Levinson?
It's not like a Jewish holiday.
It's not a Jewish holiday, but it's
like how Jews celebrate.
We go
Thanksgiving.
We go nuts on Thanksgiving.
See, 50 years and I didn't notice.
There's a Barry Levinson movie, not Diner, but I forget which one, in Baltimore, and it begins with a Jewish Thanksgiving dinner. All the tables are different tables are mishmashed together with, and then they're yelling about who made the turkey, and their arguments are going back and forth. And where's Harry? He always comes late, and your brother's no good. And they're talking and they're eating and the food's flying and the whole thing. It's like an Italian thing. But what was the point of Thanksgiving?
So I think what you were saying was, at the end of the day, it's decency.
Well, it is. And I think if you're
disagreeing with people, even
disagree.
Though
so it's a Jewish, especially a Jewish thing is the Talmud is other than the Torah, the Talmud, which is the first 7 books of the Bible, I guess, or however many there are. The Talmud is the book of Jewish learning, and for 6,000 years, rabbis have been arguing about it. And there are many arguments about every word in the Talmud as there are words. There are many more arguments about it than words in the Talmud, and that doesn't mean we hate each other.
And the same is true for Islam. And the same is through Christianity.
There's an intellectual discourse.
Yes. I always found a difference that I found between knowing what I do know about, again, I didn't grow up anywhere near any Jewish communities, but a big fan of, I do think the Jews are the chosen people. I do. I'm like the opposite of an anti-Semite. I'm like just Jewophile. But one of the things that I would hear from Jewish friends, or when I would look into what differences are, Christians and Catholics are, I told you, and now you know, and that's it. And go on with that information that I gave you. Whereas what I know about at least some sects of Jewish people is, I'm telling you, and now you ask me about 5 questions about that.
Right. That's
you question, and you prove it to yourself, or you disagree, and we're going to talk about it. Which that's how you make better people. Other than that's how you get JD Vances of I told you, and that's it.
If you want people to think, then I think it makes a better society.
Exactly.
I will tell you my current joke. I tell my black friends that I tell my white friends, at this point in history, black folks can't save you this time.
I read that.
Right?
You wrote about
you have to go home this Thanksgiving. That's why I was cracking up when you explained it to me. You got to home and deal with your crazy uncle. Okay? Somebody got to talk to somebody. I can't go in an Irish household and reason with, Uncle Mickey. He's not going to listen to me. You got to go talk to Uncle Mickey, right? And I'm not going in the Italian household and seeing Uncle Vinny. I'm not talking to him either. You got to go talk to him. And then you might have to talk to him again on Christmas and again on St. Patrick's Day. But somehow there has to be a basis that all the people in this country can at least agree on what the problems are.
Yeah,
That won't happen.
it's not.
I'm not giving up. Maybe that makes me the idealist here.
But
I
be
am
that.
not giving up on that
How about
possibility.
agree to the methods and the decency?
Yeah,
That's it. They're not going to agree to the problems. I mean, look at Jews right now. Jews have always been progressive, always.
Mhm.
The early
Until
socialists, the
recently.
labor movement, the civil rights movement, the two guys who got killed.
Goodman, Schroeder,
with-
and Cheney.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Jews and a poor black kid, and then they all ended up in the same ditch.
Yes, sir.
So, and they were brothers in arms.
Yes.
And then, obviously, then the black liberation theology with Malcolm X
Mhm.
started questioning.
What are we
Well,
getting?
not questioning Jews so much as saying we need our own. We don't need help from other people. We
Answer
need
the
our
question. What do I get for my service? That's what the black liberation theology that you're talking about basically says. Okay, if I'm going to continue to be an American,
Right.
but not get acknowledged as American,
Right.
what's the point?
Mhm.
So now what I'll do is I'll say, I demand to be recognized as an American. And how does that make America feel?
But he also demanded to be separate. There was a separatist,
Yeah, there was a
which is
separationist aspect. But what I will tell you is, I don't think, what I'm going to offer you is that if you take him, you take Martin Luther King, two sides to the same coin, right? Two hands,
Right.
it takes 2 hands to pick up a big load, right? The bottom line that I'm going to say I'm qualified to speak for all of African Americanism.
in this room.
Yeah, in this room.
In this room, you
In
are,
this
yeah,
room, I'm
100%.
pretty qualified here, right? And say that all the African American has ever desired is to have the same problems as every other American and only the same problems as every other American.
All right.
We all struggle to feed our family. We all struggle to get an education. We all struggle to get the best jobs. We all want the nicest car, or we all want to be able to go vacation to Paris. What I would like to have is not get knocked in the head because I walked in the side door of the restaurant after 5 other people walked in the side door and did not get knocked in the head.
Okay, so we've gotten past walking in the front door. Now the questions are different. And the questions are how to remedy the persistent racism in America and to acknowledge it. Now there's a movement that it doesn't exist anymore. Okay, we're done with that.
We don't see color, and
we
there's
don't
no
see
sense
color.
of critical
We
race
Well,
spent
theory.
and that's
50
why
years.
that's why one of the first things they did in the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth, Great American, and there's a word that follows Great American, and I won't say it.
Is it another A word?
No, it's the N word with the Z.
Oh, I was just going to go for asshole.
I think he is a racist bigot,
Yes,
and
he
I
is.
think
Of course
he's
he
a
is.
fascist. I
The-
absolutely
they-
do.
So
I
here's
mean,
I think he's on the face. He
core
looks like
is-
a cover of a Nazi magazine.
He-
But he fired as many black generals as he could get away with.
4 that I count so
Mhm.
far. That's generals.
And I mean at the highest level generals.
Yeah, we're going down, and we can go down to 3-star, 2-star. We can go down
Oh,
to
then it gets way
lieutenants,
more.
admirals,
It's way more than that.
and then women. And there's a new ad. I don't know if you saw it for the American workforce. The Washington Post published it. There's a series of posters of young, strapping men that
they
look
brought
like.
back full on.
Did you see that?
Oh yeah, I saw them.
And
'Cause
it
I
looked
thought
like
they
a
were-
Nazi. It
That's
looked
what
like
they used to look like.
it looks like an Aryan youth ad.
100%.
Did you see what we're talking about?
100%. You've seen them before in textbooks from the
They
40s.
say things like "Put America back to work."
Mhm.
America's for American
Mm-hmm.
workers. All these big headings, and underneath are really handsome. Look like either the covers of a gay magazine
Uh-huh.
or a woman's romance magazine. Men,
Yes.
the brawny paper
That's
towel
exactly
man.
who it is.
And they're all standing there, white as can be,
Mm-hmm.
and they look like lovely people, but they're all exactly the same white man.
The ideal white man that he told his 800 generals that they should all be, and that all their soldiers should be.
Right? Should be the same one.
He shouldn't have been able to walk out of that building. They should have just done what they wanted to do in that moment. I've never been so.
Embarrassed.
I mean, I would claim secondhand embarrassment, but I can't claim anything
So as an
from
African
Hegseth
American,
that I could feel
I'm gonna
because
help
that
you
is
out now.
a
Because as
worm
an
of a
African
human being.
American, I claim embarrassment on
On
behalf
behalf
of the Americans who are too deeply engaged in their fantasy to be embarrassed.
Well,
How is this anybody's fantasy? Like,
Well,
what
but
is
there's
the
an
end
answer.
game?
There's an answer for that. There's an answer for that I'm not going to tell on this show. I'm sorry, folks. You're going to have to tune in next time before I tell you that story. But I will say this. I really, really, really believe that the liberals that you have made reference to, such as to the extent that there are any anymore,
sure there are.
this is their time of obligation.
Well, let me give some names. Who do I think are the best traditional liberals who fill the decency requirement and the smart civil servant requirement? Is Pete Buttigieg.
Mm-hmm.
I think the smartest guy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Shapiro, truly one of the most savvy, smart, and politically chicane guys in the room who can handle himself. So that's a Jew and a gay man. So let's just keep going
My
with.
favorites.
So are they both unelectable? I don't know.
I don't.
I
People
think-
are really rallying behind
Also,
Pete.
So this is our conversation last night dinner table. So there were two gay couples, and my wife, a straight couple, and another woman. So it was a nice mix of white yet sexually diverse, I guess, people. But when I said Pete Buttigieg, one of the gays in a couple said, he's just too short. American presidents have to be over 6'2".
Wow. Let's see.
He's too short.
Historically
it's the
accurate,
George Dukakis problem.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be short. And you know what? He might be right. It's not that he's
you
gay.
never know what it is
Is it
anymore.
that he's
gay
It's
or
got to
too
be
short?
something.
So here's my question. Is Gavin Newsom to California?
I mean,
Or to what? I have other things.
yeah.
I think California covers it.
Well, California, he's very metrosexual. He looks great.
Yeah, he looks great, and like
He looks too great.
The savvy, the technical savviness, and his team of Gen Z journalists who are really just knocking out of the park for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you read those,
He's playing
he
the game.
tweeted out and all that stuff, playing the game. The way he's playing the game differently than anyone else is by biting back in the same way. Right. But that's not even really him doing it. And
I agree with you. Because I think what you're saying is authenticity. The reason Trump got elected, one of the reasons, too. And you got to just fess up to it.
Say it.
He's perceived as authentic.
Which is so crazy.
I'm agreeing with you.
He's perceived as authentic. If someone is a schmuck, he'll call him, you're a goddamn whatever. He'll use bad words. Mm-hmm. He'll say what he's thinking. He'll get in trouble. He'll say, you grab him by the whatever. He was willing to be completely politically incorrect, which means to them that he's not owned.
Messing around.
He's not owned by anybody.
He's in.
Number one. He has some sense of humor in a weird way.
He's a smart guy in this very weird way. I'll tell you what way. He's the greatest salesman since P.T. Barnum.
That's the third thing. The third thing is he says what he seems to think. He seems to be authentic. And he's a salesman, and he's promised them the things they need. Brazenly and crassly, I'll bring the price of chicken down to $1. Whatever.
I don't think they believe any of those promises.
No, I think
the thing that he promised them that I think they believe is
he'll keep the blacks down.
Absolutely.
And the Mexicans
correct.
I think
out.
Racism.
Blacks down.
Yep.
Mexicans out, and everything will be fine.
Except there was one politician who said, "Remember, it's the economy, stupid."
Yeah, and where's that guy now?
Yeah.
Well,
we don't hear from him.
Well, here's my feeling: you can sell it on keeping the brown people, sending them back to wherever or to places they never were.
Yeah.
For the most part, they're not sending them back.
No,
they're sending them to countries that they never visited.
They're sending them away,
or Africa just for fun.
Same shit.
but the promise of the economy will bust that. Mm-hmm. When they can't get their Thanksgiving table full of the food, enough food to eat,
Because
they
nobody
won't
in
care
America
about
wants
brown
to
people
pick the-
anymore. At
Come
that
on.
one moment, their paradigm will shift that you didn't give us the money and we need the money. It's the economy. So he will lose on the economy if the economy is not.
But we have to wait for it to kind of crash out a little bit.
So we have to
and
wait
that's
for
the part that
3
sucks.
years
And-
and pray
well,
for a
I'm
shittier
just-
economy,
Yeah.
which I don't want to do.
And I'm going to add one more thing. As we come to the close of this session, which has been great. And I'm really glad you were here. And thank you for helping us with this. Getting down past this old high school stuff to the real facts.
I still want to hear more about it, but we'll have to discuss that
Problem
later.
is that the folks on the left, the so-called liberals, have to sack up. And as they say in my fraternity, live your creed.
Mm.
Because sitting on the sideline and bitching will not get this done. You saw something happen on this past Tuesday, and the very next day, certain elected officials caved on the thing that they swore they would never cave on.
Oh, they caved on the shutdown.
And it's almost entirely people that can't get primaried until 2032.
There you go.
So much.
Well, I think they feel a couple of things. I think they feel that if this shutdown went to Thanksgiving, whoever the public blames for it will never be elected again.
Yeah, and they were too chicken to be that person. Okay? But that's a story for another day. My friend, thank you so much for coming out and talking to us.
You know what? I wanted to hear about your poetry, and
We'll have to have you back.
Well, yeah, I would love to
because
have you
I want
back.
to talk about poetry and music.
I want to talk about poetry and music.
maybe not about Trump.
I don't want to talk.
I don't think
want
we
to
We
talk
have one
about
where
Trump.
the T word is not to be said. Do we have 1 second for an
I
anecdote?
don't know. My
We have-
producer's yelling at me now. I don't know. I'm going to have you back.
We're about 30 seconds over.
I'll say,
Have you back.
see you. I love you, brother.